Imagine a skinny 17-year-old kid, right? He's standing on this jagged cliff in West Virginia.
Oh, yeah, surviving on, like, gas station peanuts and energy drinks.
Exactly. But in his hands, he's holding this plain, seamless white box, and it weighs absolutely nothing.
Like holding a shape made out of air.
Yeah, literally. And inside that little box is, well, the instantaneous death of the global economy.
The obsolescence of every government on Earth.
Right. And the eradication of, roughly 90% of all human crime. So welcome to the Deep Dive.
Glad to be here.
We have a profoundly fascinating mission today for you. We are unpacking a stack of world-building notes and a short sci-fi story pilot called Slipstream.
It's such a brilliant concept.
It really is. The creator has envisioned this post-scarcity society built around what they call the blob pod.
Right, the blob pod future.
Yeah. So we're going to explore the nuts and bolts of this world, and then we're going to use it to interrogate a massive, almost intimidating question.
Which is, what happens if you completely eliminate economic desperation?
Exactly. If every single human need is instantly met by this magical piece of technology, what kind of crime, conflict, and darkness actually survives?
It's the ultimate stress test for human nature.
Totally.
We spend so much of our daily lives operating under the assumption that our societal structures,
So power grids, water treatment, stuff like that.
right, the massive shipping conglomerates, the criminal justice systems, we think they're permanent fixtures of reality.
But they're not.
No, and this thought experiment strips all of that away. We're looking at a scenario where all traditional infrastructure is rendered completely irrelevant by these self-contained, self-replicating pods.
And by gaming out the criminal elements that would actually survive this transition, we're not just critiquing a piece of science fiction, right?
No, we're forcing ourselves to look at the true root causes of why humans hurt each other.
Right. So to even begin figuring out what the criminal underworld looks like in this future, we first have to understand the technology that burned the old world down.
We have to look at that pilot scene.
Yeah, that visceral opening scene in the Slipstream pilot. The imagery is just incredible. You have this kid walking out of Beckley, West Virginia.
Right, stepping on those old railroad ties.
Yeah, he describes them as crumbling like wet bread under his boots. He calls himself 140 pounds of bad posture.
I love that line.
It's so evocative. His backpack feels like a bag of anvils. His phone is dying. He is the physical embodiment of scarcity and fatigue.
But the box he's carrying just defies all of that.
Yeah.
He mentions it has no seams, no hinges, no charging ports, no corporate logos anywhere.
It's like minimalist art.
Exactly. But he's walked 3 days deep into the Appalachian wilderness, specifically to place it in one precise location.
On that flat rock.
Right. He finds this clearing on a steep hill, flat rock angling perfectly south. And the view stretches over this massive ancient gorge, catching the fading orange and purple light.
The text says the light fades into the color of distance.
Which is just beautiful.
So he sets the box down. And for a second, his inner critic flares up, right? He hears the voice of every guidance counselor who ever told him to be realistic.
To get a normal job.
Exactly. But then the box activates. And it doesn't just pop open like a cooler.
No, the notes describe it as reverse origami.
Yeah, break that down.
So it splits along these invisible geometric lines, right? Expanding and unfolding in a way that looks grown rather than manufactured.
It's like organic.
Exactly. It darkens, takes on this shell-like texture, and emits a low, resonant hum.
A hum he can literally feel in his ribcage.
Yeah. And in 30 seconds, a structure the size of a single-wide mobile home has anchored itself to that rock.
With root-like extensions literally gripping the stone.
Right.
An irising door opens, he walks inside, and the environment instantly anticipates him. The amber lighting is already on.
There's a kitchen surface, a workbench.
And that bed. The bed that actually maps to his spine and adjusts its density to ease his aching back.
Which is, incredible.
He lies down, looks out the curved window at this rusted, abandoned trestle bridge, this monument to dead industry. And for the first time in his entire life, the kid realizes he is not afraid.
And you really have to think about what that fear actually is,
The baseline fear.
Yeah, the defining background noise of modern human existence is the fear of scarcity.
Not being able to make rent.
Exactly. The fear of losing your job, the fear of exposure, the fear of starving. The pod is basically a machine that instantly neutralizes that baseline existential dread.
But it's not magic, right? Like, The creator actually outlines how it does this.
Right. There are highly specific technical specifications in the world-building notes.
Let's get into the nuts and bolts then.
Okay. First, the BlobCOD is a sealed, completely unhackable ecosystem. There is no programming interface for the user.
So you can't, like, plug a keyboard into it.
No, you can't. And there are no firmware updates to download from some corporate server.
That is a massive detail. No one can remotely brick your house because you missed a subscription payment.
Exactly. You own it completely.
Okay, but what powers this thing? How does it conjure food out of thin air?
It utilizes a zero-point furnace.
Okay, meaning what?
Instead of burning coal or capturing solar rays, zero-point energy theory suggests pulling infinite energy from the quantum fluctuations of empty space itself.
So it requires absolutely no fuel.
None. Zero fuel. It also uses automated microscopic drills to tap directly into deep water tables.
Wow. Okay, so energy and water are covered. What about food?
For sustenance and materials, it houses a molecular replicator.
Like Star Trek.
Very much like that. Atomic assembly. It takes carbon, hydrogen, oxygen from the air and the ground and reorganizes them into a hot meal, or a winter coat, or a specialized tool instantaneously.
So it's not just warming up pre-packaged space-based.
No.
It's literally building a perfect medium-rare steak atom by atom.
Exactly.
And then for entertainment, the notes mention a 720-degree spherical VR holodeck.
Which is a trip to think about.
I had to do the math for a second. A 360-degree view is just a circle around you.
Yeah.
720 degrees implies a full sphere.
Right, meaning you can look up, look down, you can fall, fly.
There are no edges to the simulation.
Yeah.
Infinite, physically immersive experiences.
And perhaps the most crucial piece of technology here for the survival of the society as a whole is the communication layer.
The mesh network.
Right. The pods connect to each other via a decentralized subspace mesh network.
We hear the word decentralized a lot in tech today, but break down what that actually means for survival here.
Well, in our current world, your cell phone talks to a cell tower, right?
Right.
Which connects to a massive server farm owned by a telecommunications corporation. That's a centralized system.
So if a storm knocks out the tower, or a hacker attacks the server,
Or a government decides to shut off the internet, you are completely isolated.
yeah, you're cut off.
But a mesh network operates like a massive encrypted game of telephone. Every single pod acts as its own relay station, passing data directly to the next nearest pod.
So there's no central hub to destroy.
None. There is no switch to flip. As long as there are pods, there is an indestructible peer-to-peer web of communication.
It's the ultimate off-grid architecture. It's like someone took the entire fragile global supply chain,
The industrial farms, sweatshops, power grids.
the undersea cables, water treatment plants, shrunk it all down into a single seed and just handed it to you.
Yeah.
Plant it, and you no longer need civilization to survive.
Exactly.
But this kid didn't invent this tech in his garage. He got it from somewhere.
Right. He was given the box by a group known in the notes as the Avens.
And his method of communicating with them is so cool.
It really is. He experiences visions of this future through what he calls a slipstream.
On a busted CRT television.
Yeah, that he dragged out of an alley dumpster.
I just love that. The portal to a post-scarcity future is hiding inside a piece of heavy, obsolete 1990s technology.
It's a brilliant juxtaposition.
He tunes this busted tube TV past the static until he finds a frequency he can literally feel vibrating in his teeth.
It kind of blends timeline realities. The slipstream is a bleed over from the future.
And the Avens.
They're future humans who have inhabited these blob pods for so many generations that they've fundamentally decoupled from biological scarcity.
And the creator explicitly compares them to the vampires in Near Dark, which I found fascinating.
Yeah, Catherine Bigelow's film.
Right. Because when you think of vampires, you usually think of, like, blood-sucking monsters.
Dracula.
Yeah. But in Near Dark, the vampires are these drifters who operate completely outside the normal human economy. They don't work, they don't age normally, they don't play by the rules of daylight and labor.
And that's exactly the parallel the creator is drawing, just, minus the predatory need for human blood.
Right.
The Avens look human, but they've drifted so far from baseline human concerns that they seem utterly alien to a stressed-out, malnourished kid from West Virginia.
Because their bodies are constantly repaired by the pod's medical systems.
Exactly. They don't endure the physical wear and tear of labor. They don't even eat out of necessity.
They're immortal drifters living in perfect abundance.
And they're using the slipstream to indirectly guide the kid. They don't give him an instruction manual.
They just hand him the seed and tell him, place it where you want to be. It will know.
They are initiating a transition. Which brings us to the core of our analysis today.
Right, the big question. If this 17-year-old kid successfully plants this seed and the blob pod technology proliferates across the globe, what happens to the criminal underworld?
If you eliminate scarcity, do you eliminate crime?
Right. Do you?
Well, you don't eliminate all of it, but you completely eradicate the foundation of it.
Yeah.
Let's look at the collapse of survival-based crime first.
Okay.
Roughly 90% of global crime is purely economic. Theft, burglary, armed robbery, shoplifting, embezzlement.
All driven by money or things.
Right. Think about the mechanics of theft. In a blob pod world, the concept of property theft becomes a logical absurdity.
Because why would I break your window to steal your toaster when I can simply turn around, walk into my own pod, and tell my replicator to assemble an identical toaster atom by atom?
Exactly. You don't even have to pay for the atoms.
The economic motivation to take something from someone else drops to literally zero.
It drops to zero. And that same logic annihilates the global drug trade, which is arguably the largest economic engine for violent crime today.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Let's dig into that.
To understand why the drug trade dies, you have to look at the dual-sided desperation that fuels it. You have desperate sellers and desperate buyers.
Okay, let's look at the sellers first. People at the street level aren't usually dealing narcotics because it's a glamorous passion project, right?
No, they do it because their environment offers zero viable economic alternatives.
If your neighborhood has no jobs, failing schools, and rampant poverty, the underground economy is literally the only ladder available.
But if a seller is given a blob pod, that desperation vanishes instantly.
Because they have infinite food, infinite shelter, absolute safety.
Right. The financial incentive to risk prison or death to sell drugs just evaporates.
And then look at the buyers. Why is the opioid crisis so devastating right now?
Many addicts are self-medicating.
Yeah, trying to numb physical pain from manual labor, psychological trauma, or just the sheer crushing hopelessness of their economic conditions.
But in the blob pod future, the pod's medical suite can repair chronic physical pain.
And the environment removes the economic hopelessness.
Exactly. And if someone simply wants to escape reality and feel euphoria, they don't need a chemical that destroys their liver and brain.
They just step into the 720-degree VR holodeck.
Yes. They can experience a simulated reality that is completely safe and physically non-destructive.
So the drug war isn't won by putting more cops on the street or building bigger prisons.
Not at all.
It's won by rendering the narcotic economy completely irrelevant.
Exactly.
But, okay, this makes me wonder about the big players, the Al Capone type. The massive cartel bosses and criminal syndicates that operate like shadow corporations. A street dealer might be happy to retire to a mountain pod, but a cartel boss craves power. Surely they figure out a way to adapt.
Actually, the infrastructure of the blob pod completely neuters them too.
Really? How?
To understand why, you have to understand the mechanics of a mafia. Organized crime relies entirely on artificial scarcity and a trapped labor pool.
Like prohibition.
Exactly. Al Capone didn't become a kingpin because people suddenly loved alcohol. He became a kingpin because the government passed prohibition, creating a massive artificial scarcity of a desired product.
So he stepped in to control the bottleneck.
Right, but you cannot bottleneck a molecular replicator.
Oh, man. Yeah, if everyone has a machine that can print whatever they want out of thin air, there's literally no supply chain for a mafia to hijack.
Precisely. And consider the other staple of organized crime, the protection racket.
Oh, I love this part. If I'm a mobster in Chicago today, I walk into your family-owned bakery and I say, "Beautiful ovens you have here. It would be a real tragedy if the place caught fire. Pay me $2,000 a month for protection."
And you, the baker, are trapped.
Yeah, my bakery is a physical location. I signed a commercial lease. I have expensive ovens bolted to the floor. I rely on local foot traffic. I can't just pick up my building and run.
You have leverage over their physical vulnerability.
Right.
But apply that same threat in the blob pod future. A would-be mobster walks up to someone's pod in a valley and tries to extort them.
The pod owner doesn't even need to argue.
No. They can literally command the pod to uproot itself, or simply leave, walk a mile away, and spawn a brand new pod.
That is hilarious.
You cannot run a protection racket on a population that is infinitely mobile, infinitely resilient, and entirely self-sufficient.
The mobster is basically threatening a ghost.
Exactly. The fundamental tools of domination, the ability to withhold resources or threaten stationary property, are completely neutralized.
And this concept of mobility totally rewrites the rules for street gangs too, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Because gangs fight over territory. They fight over specific blocks and street corners because physical space in a crowded urban environment is a scarce resource.
Territorial scarcity is an artifact of the modern city. Cities force millions of people to concentrate in confined, flat spaces because we require centralized infrastructure.
Paved roads, power lines, sewer mains.
Flat foundations. But the world building notes introduce this incredible concept to solve this: the serrated real estate of mountains.
That phrase blew my mind. Serrated real estate.
It's so good.
When we think of habitable land, we think of a 2D map. We look for flat plains, wide valleys, or coastlines. But think of a piece of paper.
Right.
If it's flat on a desk, it has a specific surface area. If you crumple that paper up into a ball, the actual surface area remains the same, but it takes up a fraction of the horizontal space. A mountain range is essentially a massively crumpled piece of paper. If you can inhabit the verticality, every single jagged ridge, every hidden plateau, every steep ravine, the available surface area is absolutely staggering.
And because a blob pod molds its root-like base to grip sheer rock, it doesn't need a flat foundation.
Right, it can just clamp on.
Exactly. Because it flies or drops in, it doesn't need a paved road. Suddenly, the entire vertical dimension of Earth's topography becomes viable real estate.
You could have tens of millions of people living throughout the Rocky Mountains or the Alps, and the space is so vast and complex that none of them would ever even have to see each other.
So the territorial pressure vanishes.
Yeah. Two rival factions aren't going to have a shootout over a street corner in a decaying city when any one of them can just pack up and go claim a pristine, isolated peak in the Himalayas.
With an infinite food supply and a perfect VR setup.
The physical friction of overcrowding is just gone.
It is. But perhaps the most profound psychological shift outlined in these notes is the theoretical end of terrorism.
Okay, that is a heavy pivot, but let's explore the mechanics of it. Why does terrorism stop?
We have to look at the psychological fuel of extremism. Terrorism rarely recruits from the comfortable and the autonomous.
Right.
It recruits heavily from the dispossessed, the humiliated, and the marginalized. It thrives in populations that feel they have lost everything: their homes, their dignity, their agency.
It's the weaponization of people who feel they have absolutely no future.
Exactly.
Think about the recruitment pitch in a war-torn region or a bleak refugee camp. The pitch is essentially, the world has abandoned you. Your life here is miserable and worthless. Come take up arms, strike back at the enemy, and die for this glorious cause because you have nothing left to lose anyway.
Now interrupt that pitch with a blob pod.
Yeah?
If you hand that marginalized youth a white box and it unfolds into a fortress overlooking the Mediterranean Sea, offering absolute physical safety, infinite culinary options, and a mesh connection to all human knowledge, the recruitment pitch disintegrates.
Yeah, come strap a bomb to your chest. Simply cannot compete with, I'm going to replicate an amazing dinner, watch the sunset over the water, and spend the evening exploring a simulated galaxy in my holodeck.
When you give a person absolute autonomy and a guaranteed future, they generally do not want to blow themselves up.
Okay, I have to push back here.
Sure.
Because this all sounds incredibly airtight on an economic and logistical level, but my cynical alarm bells are ringing so loudly right now.
I get that.
Because humans are deeply, inherently flawed. We are petty, we hold grudges, we are driven by ego and rage. Surely, even if you give us a magic box and infinite resources, we will find a way to make each other miserable. I mean, you can fix the economics of a society, but you cannot rewrite the human heart.
You are absolutely right to push back, and the beauty of this world building is that it doesn't pretend this is a flawless, shiny utopia.
Okay.
The blob pod fixes the economics. It does not fix psychology. So we must transition to the dark side of this premise.
Let's do it.
If we eliminate the 90% of crime driven by survival and money, what does that remaining 10% look like? What is the architecture of the new underworld?
Let's talk about crimes of passion.
Okay.
A husband finds out his wife is cheating on him through a message intercepted on the mesh network. He gets enraged, he walks over to the guy's pod, and violence ensues. Jealousy, heartbreak, revenge. None of these have ever required a financial motive. They will absolutely still happen.
They will. Human emotion remains volatile. However, there is a massive structural silver lining here regarding domestic situations.
Oh.
Think about the mechanics of domestic abuse in our current society. Financial stress and the sheer lack of affordable housing are major logistical factors that trap victims in abusive relationships.
That's very true.
Leaving an abuser requires a monumental logistical effort. You need to secretly save money, pack a go bag, find a domestic violence shelter with an open bed, or rely on friends.
The economic barrier to escaping is often what forces people to stay in dangerous proximity. Oh, wow. I see where this is going. The blob pod acts as the ultimate instantaneous safe shelter.
Precisely. If a victim of abuse decides they need to leave, they don't have to plan a desperate midnight escape with a suitcase.
They can simply step outside, spawn a new pod from the replicator.
Or command their current pod to detach and relocate 50 miles away in the blink of an eye.
The physical, geographic, and economic barriers to escaping a violent partner are entirely removed.
It doesn't cure the rage of the abuser, but it provides a perfect, fictionless escape hatch for the victim. You are literally stepping out of the geographic timeline of your abuser.
That is a staggering shift in power dynamics.
Yeah.
But what about the truly irredeemable stuff?
Like what?
Predatory pathology, serial killers, sociopaths who prey on others not because they want money and not out of jealousy, but because their brains are biologically wired for sadism. A magic white box isn't going to rewire a psychopath's frontal lobe.
No, it won't. Serial killers and pathological predators will still exist. But the structure of the blob pod future drastically reduces their attack surface.
I love that term, attack surface. It's a cybersecurity concept, right?
It is.
The number of vulnerabilities a system exposes to an attacker. How does that apply to physical geography here?
Well, in a dense urban city, a predator's attack surface is massive. They have anonymous access to thousands of potential victims just by walking down a crowded street, riding a subway, or visiting a public park.
The city provides camouflage and proximity.
Exactly. But in the blob pod world, the population is radically decentralized.
Yeah.
People are scattered across mountain ranges and deep forests.
Right. A child playing outside their pod on a remote ridge in the Cascades isn't going to have a random stranger walk past them.
The sheer physical distance between people makes opportunistic, anonymous predation incredibly difficult.
And if someone does go missing, you have the mesh network.
Yes. The mesh allows for a distributed, decentralized vigilance. It replicates the dynamics of a small town, but on a global scale.
Because everyone is connected peer-to-peer.
Right. If a predator is identified or someone is in danger, the community can instantly share that data without waiting for a centralized police bureaucracy to issue an alert.
It's not a panopticon surveillance state run by a government.
No, it's a mutual defense web.
Okay, what about the ego crimes? The narcissists? The people who just deeply need to dominate and subjugate others.
The would-be dictators and cult leaders.
Yeah. If my core psychological drive is to force people to bow to me, how do I operate in a world where everyone is a king of their own infinite castle?
We can call this concept the dictator on mute.
I like that.
To understand this, you have to look at the mechanics of coercion. How does a dictator actually force people to obey?
They do it by hoarding wealth, controlling access to land, and withholding vital resources like food or physical security.
They build a monopoly on violence and survival.
But I can't do any of that in this world. I can't hoard wealth because wealth as a medium of exchange doesn't exist when everyone can print what they need. I can't control land because anyone can just pack up their pod and fly away. I can't starve my enemies out because their pod pulls carbon from the air to make bread. I have zero leverage.
Exactly. So what tool is left for the narcissist?
Nothing but words.
Nothing but words. A would-be tyrant, someone who might have been a brutal warlord in our timeline, is reduced to a furious guy screaming demands into the subspace mesh network.
And the people listening don't have to obey.
They don't have to fear him. They just roll their eyes, hit the mute button, and go back to enjoying their holodeck.
The structural tools of physical coercion are entirely gone.
It's brilliant.
The image of a furious, powerless tyrant just screaming into the void while everyone ignores him is deeply satisfying. But let's talk about the danger of the void itself.
What do you mean?
What about sheer boredom? If every single physical need is met instantly, and you never have to strive for survival, don't people go a little crazy from the lack of friction?
Boredom crime is actually a highly speculated area in these notes. Yeah. Most people will find fulfillment in the infinite creative and experiential possibilities of the VR holodeck, but there will always be thrill seekers.
People who reject the safety of virtual reality because they crave the adrenaline of real-world risk.
Exactly. They might push the manufacturing limits of their pods, trying to build dangerous, unauthorized tech just to see if they can.
Or they might organize real-world chaos just to feel something visceral.
It's the Joker archetype. Some people just want to introduce entropy into a perfect system.
Right, but again, Without a massive, crowded metropolis to terrorize, the Joker's impact is severely blunted. He can't blow up a hospital if hospitals don't exist and everyone is dispersed.
He's basically just blowing up a rock in the desert while everyone else is 50 miles away.
Okay, but what about psychological manipulation? If physical coercion is gone, what about social engineering?
If the pod's physical shell is unhackable, the only attack vector left is the human mind. Cult leaders will absolutely use the mesh network for social engineering.
It's like televangelism 2.0 or QAnon, but with perfect, uninterrupted communication tools.
Exactly.
A charismatic leader finds isolated, lonely people on the mesh, manipulates their search for meaning, and feeds them a false sense of purpose to build a following.
They will try. But again, look at how the infrastructure defeats the worst outcomes. How do cults maintain control in the real world today?
Through physical isolation and physical dependence.
They build compound walls, they confiscate members' passports.
They cut them off from their families so that the followers become completely dependent on the leader for their next meal and a roof over their heads.
But in the blob pod future, every single follower brings their own independent, fully self-sufficient infrastructure with them.
Right. Let's say a cult leader convinces 1,000 people to move their pods to a specific valley to form a community.
Sure, they can do that.
But the second a follower wakes up, realizes they're being manipulated, and wants out, the compound walls are utterly meaningless.
They don't have to sneak past guards in the dead of night.
No, they just sit in their chair, command their pod to lift off, and leave. The cult leader cannot physically trap them.
The overarching takeaway here is profound. The blob pod does not magically sanitize human nature. People will still be petty, manipulative, and occasionally violent.
But what the pod does is dismantle the physical and economic infrastructure that allows crime to scale.
Exactly. What remains is purely psychological and heavily mitigated by every potential victim's ability to instantly relocate.
Okay, let's look at this from a narrative angle then. We've just established that crime is mostly solved, or at least severely handicapped, and everyone can live happily in their isolated mountain fortresses.
Right.
Where is the dramatic tension for the Slipstream story? A sci-fi pilot needs conflict. If the future is this secure, what is the story actually about?
The narrative tension doesn't lie in the reality of the blob pod future itself. The tension lies entirely in the transition.
Getting from the year 2026 to a post-scarcity utopia is not going to be a peaceful, smooth ride.
Not at all. Because the people running the world in 2026 are not going to quietly step down.
Definitely not.
The notes make it explicitly clear. The real villains of this story are not future hackers or mesh network cult leaders. The villains are the present-day gatekeepers.
Governments, multinational corporations, the military-industrial complex.
Yes. Think about this from the perspective of you, the listener, right now. Think about your rent, your mortgage, your taxes, your utility bills, the cost of groceries.
Every single one of those expenses is a lever of control.
The people who control the supply of housing, food, and energy control you. That is how power functions.
A government derives its authority from its ability to manage scarce resources, collect taxes, and enforce laws over a defined territory.
And a corporation derives its profit from controlling a supply chain and selling you the things you desperately need to stay alive.
So if you drop the blob pod technology, a magic white box that gives every citizen infinite free food, infinite free energy, and infinite mobility into that system, it isn't viewed as a miracle.
No, it is viewed as an existential threat.
It is an extinction-level event for the Dow Jones and for every political power structure on the planet.
If everyone can print their own necessities, the entire global economy collapses overnight. The leverage is gone.
That explains why the Avens, the advanced future humans, don't just park a massive spaceship over New York and hand out 8 billion pods all at once.
Right. If they did that, the powers that be would launch nuclear weapons to stop them.
Yes, they have to be subtle. And that is why the protagonist's role is so critical.
This skinny, exhausted 17-year-old kid with the bad posture and the dying phone is essentially a smuggler.
He isn't building a dystopia. He is trying to guide humanity into a genuine, liberating utopia.
But he has to plant these seeds quietly, organically, in the forgotten corners of the world, like the Appalachian wilderness.
Because if the billionaires and the generals realize what this box actually does, they will burn the world down to protect their leverage.
The irony is just staggering. It's a brilliant thematic point.
It really is. Humanity's biggest threat isn't the advanced technology itself. We always write stories about killer robots or rogue AI wiping us out.
But in this story, our biggest threat is our own deeply ingrained psychological conditioning.
We're so used to the leverage of scarcity that we believe we cannot be trusted with abundance.
We would literally rather manage our own misery and suffer all the violence, crime, and poverty that comes with the scarcity model than allow someone to actually solve it.
Because solving it means the people currently at the top lose their crowns.
We view radical abundance as dangerous because it disrupts the hierarchy we rely on to feel organized.
The protagonist is the bridge. He has to navigate a world that actively wants to destroy the very mechanism that could save it. That is your dramatic tension.
It's a high-stakes thriller about smuggling salvation past the heavily armed guards of a dying paradigm.
That is an incredible setup for a first season. But let's fast forward. Let's say the kid succeeds. The transition happens.
Yeah.
The old world fades away, the skyscrapers crumble, the Dow Jones zeroes out, and generations pass. Everyone is living peacefully in their blob pods in the mountains and forests. You need a new conflict for the later seasons.
Right, you can't just have people lounging around.
And the world-building notes give us exactly that with a brilliant environmental plot twist.
This is where the creator's understanding of systems really shines. Generations into this peaceful blob pod future, things start going wrong. The flawless system starts failing.
The mesh network starts degrading, creating these dark, isolated communication dead zones.
The zero-point furnaces inside the pods start dimming, providing less heat and less power for the replicators.
Even the local wildlife starts acting, with animals become more aggressive, more desperate, like the environment itself is getting sick.
Now remember the psychology of these people. They are generations removed from the transition.
They have never experienced a single day of scarcity, physical discomfort, or technological failure in their entire lives.
And what do humans do when their perfect environment suddenly becomes hostile and they don't understand why?
They panic.
And when a community panics, they look for a scapegoat.
And they find one, a guy they call the Nil.
Right.
He is described in the notes as a dark, quiet, solitary figure. He isn't overtly violent or mean. He mostly just keeps to himself. But human nature abhors a vacuum, so the community decides he is the cause of the degradation.
They theorize that he is an entropy hole.
The notes draw a fantastic parallel here, comparing the Nil to the shadows in the sci-fi series Babylon 5.
Or the nothing in the never-ending story.
Think about what an entropy hole feels like in real life. We've all met someone who just seems to suck the energy out of the room simply by standing in it, right?
Yeah, a person whose very existence feels heavy and draining.
The community projects that feeling onto this quiet outsider. They believe the mesh network is failing and the power is dying, because he is somehow unraveling reality just by existing near them.
So they form a mob to deal with him.
But then we get the twist, the great reveal, and it completely reframes the entire narrative of the world.
It's so good.
The twist is that the system isn't broken at all, and the Nil isn't a villain causing the decay. The blob pods are working exactly as they were designed to work.
Wait, explain the mechanics of that. Why would a perfect system start shutting down its own power?
It's not a malfunction. It's a feature. We have to go back to the original creator of the technology, the Satoshi-like genius who designed these unhackable pods.
Okay.
That creator understood human nature. They knew that humans have a relentless biological tendency to overconsume and to cluster together.
Great cities.
So they hard-coded a governor into the unhackable system. The pods are pre-programmed to constantly, silently monitor the local environmental load.
They use their deep drills to check the water table.
They monitor the soil health. They track the biodiversity of the surrounding flora and fauna.
Oh, man. So if too many humans decide they all want to live in one particularly beautiful scenic valley,
The network of pods detects that the environmental carrying capacity of that specific geographic area is being exceeded. And to prevent an ecological collapse, the pods intentionally and collectively throttle themselves.
the furnaces dim to reduce the ambient energy footprint.
The mesh degrades to make the area socially unappealing, discouraging further settlement.
Exactly. The system is essentially communicating with its users through environmental friction. It is telling them, there are too many of you clustered here. The land cannot support this density. Spread out or scale down.
But because the technology has worked so flawlessly, so invisibly, for so many generations, humanity simply forgot the original owner's manual.
The founding knowledge faded into myth.
No one remembers that the pods have hard-coded ecological limits. They had lived in perfect comfort for so long that they literally mistook abundance for infinity.
And when those limits finally kicked in, instead of reading the data and relocating to a less dense area, they panicked.
Which brings us to the real monster of the story. It is not the Nil. The Nil is just a quiet, introverted guy who happened to settle his pod near the geographic center of an overclustered region.
The real monster is human amnesia. It is our tribalism.
When the lights flicker and the comfort drops, instead of asking, what is wrong with the system we built? Humanity immediately reverts to its oldest, darkest instinct, scapegoating the nearest outsider.
We grab our pitchforks.
It elevates the story from a simple utopia goes wrong trope into a profound commentary on sustainability and human ego.
The blob pod can fix the economics of scarcity, but it cannot override the physics of ecology.
And humans, being deeply flawed, will always try to fight the physics by forming a mob.
This is so intensely relevant to how we live right now. It is a perfect analogy for what the sources refer to as water bankruptcy.
Oh yeah. Think about what we are doing with our real-world aquifers today. We are pumping out ancient groundwater to feed massive agricultural operations in the desert, draining the water tables infinitely faster than the rain can recharge them.
And when the wells inevitably run dry and the crops fail, we act completely shocked.
We point fingers, we blame politicians, we act like it's a sudden, malicious, unpredictable disaster. But the reality is that the physical system is simply hitting its natural, mathematical limit.
Our temporary abundance made us lazy, and we completely forgot to read the Earth's owner's manual.
It forces you to separate human nature from environmental conditioning. We assume that crime, conflict, and resource wars are just unchangeable facts of who we are.
But the blob pod future suggests that maybe a lot of our darkest behaviors are just symptoms of where we live and how we are forced to survive.
Yet it also warns us that even if we solve the survival equation, our hubris can still destroy us.
Absolutely.
Let's synthesize this whole incredible journey. We started with this striking, almost poetic image. A hungry, exhausted kid standing on a cliff over a dead trestle bridge in West Virginia, holding a magical white box that weighs nothing but contains the power to end the world as we know it.
We watch that box unfold into a safe haven, eliminating the fear of the future.
From there, we unpack the massive implications of that simple mechanism. We saw how absolute, decentralized abundance brings about the natural death of survival crime.
We watch the drug trade, mafia protection rackets, street gangs fighting over corners, and even the psychological engines of terrorism wither away when you remove the economic desperation and the territorial scarcity that breathe life into them.
We didn't shy away from the darkness that remains. The crimes of passion, the serial predators, the narcissistic dictators screaming on mute, and the cult leaders trying to build virtual compounds.
But we saw how the infinitely mobile, self-sufficient nature of the blob pods neutralizes the worst impacts of that darkness, providing instant escape hatches for victims.
We realized that the true narrative conflict is the transition, the dangerous heist of sneaking utopia past the present-day gatekeepers who want to maintain their leverage over us.
And finally, we looked at the long-term endgame, the humbling realization that even in a post-scarcity utopia, the physical laws of nature still apply.
The pods are designed to protect the Earth from our greed. And our greatest enemy is our own tendency to forget our limits, panic, and blame the outsider when the system forces us to correct our course.
These world-building exercises are just brilliant.
They aren't just entertaining sci-fi fiction. They hold up a massive, uncomfortable mirror to why we build the societies we do today.
They force us to look at our own infrastructure, our own economy, our own rent checks and grocery bills, and realize how much of our daily suffering and anxiety is intentionally built into the design of the system to maintain control.
Which brings us to our final, provocative thought for you to mull over. We spent this entire deep dive talking about massive societal shifts, the global economy, and human nature at large.
But we want to make it intensely personal before we go.
Let's go back to that flat rock on the cliff in West Virginia.
Right.
Imagine it is you standing there. If someone walked up to you tomorrow and handed you that weightless white box, giving you absolute uncompromised freedom, infinite resources, and the ability to live anywhere on Earth without ever needing a paycheck, a grocery store, a boss, or a landlord ever again, who would you actually become?
When you no longer have to spend 90% of your waking energy just fighting to survive and pay the bills, what does your true nature look like?
When the pressure is finally off and the X-ray machine of societal expectations is completely shattered, what is left of you?